Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Catherine and this is Raspberry Reads. I have the second installment in my new series on top five-star recommendation books, and today we're covering literary fiction. So I thought I would title this video as "For the Love of Literary Fiction, 5 top-tier literary fiction recommendations from me to you." I love literary fiction. It's one of my favorite genres. It's actually really interesting. If you have a quick Google to see how the world defines literary fiction, it's really fascinating because it can be any genre, really. It's all about the human condition, is what the internet tells me, and that you generally need to have well-crafted writing. And it needs to have really good quality characters who are sort of unforgettable and complex. Usually literary fiction is character driven rather than plot driven, but not always. And the writing or language in the works tend to be either experimental and or poetic in style. And as I said, this could be in any genre, but from my perspective, I would say that the two sort of combo genres where I read literary fiction the most are either historical fiction or literary fiction. But I'd be really interested to hear from you all. If you do read literary fiction, do you tend to read books that are associated with other genres? And then how would you firstly describe that book? Would you describe it firstly as literary or as contemporary, historical, what have you? Yeah, very interested to hear your thoughts, so please put them in the comments below. But we are here today for five-star literary fiction recommendations. This will be the first of many videos in this genre, but let's just get started with the first top 5, shall we? So first up, and I don't think this will be a huge surprise to my longtime followers, but I have A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor. So I've read this several years ago. This is about a count or an aristocrat who is Russian, and he's on house arrest in a hotel, and the count's name is Count Alexander Rostov, and it basically follows this count's time in the hotel and the relationships he forms with the people both in the hotel, but also sort of visiting him or external to the hotel, let's say. And it's basically a beautifully poetic reflection on humanity is how I would describe it. This book, I've heard, is not for everybody, but I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed it for that humanity aspect. And just in case it's helpful for anybody who hasn't read this book, I thought I would read the synopsis because I think it does a really good job of giving you a taste of what to expect from this book. So it says, on the 21st of June, 1922, Count Alexander Rostov, recipient of the Order of St. Andrew, member of the Jockey Club, master of the hunt, is escorted out of the Kremlin, across the Red Square, and through the elegant revolving doors of the Hotel Metropole. Deemed an unrepentant aristocrat by a Bolshevik tribunal, the Count has been sentenced to house arrest indefinitely. But instead of his usual suite, he must live in an attic room while Russia undergoes decades of tumultuous upheaval. Can a life without luxury be the richest of all? First of all, I think that is a beautiful synopsis, and I think it actually does a really good job of encapsulating this book. Now, the last video I did, which was the five-star historical fiction recommendations, which I will link down below, blew up in a big way, and I got a lot of feedback on that video saying that people enjoyed the 3 words that I used to describe the books, so I will continue with that. So for A Gentleman in Moscow, the 3 words that I would use to describe this are contemplative. Not only does the Count contemplate a lot about his life and the people that he meets, but also I would say as a reader it's quite contemplative. It's sophisticated. obviously it's a book about account, so we're talking about sort of sophisticated lifestyles in terms of luxury, even though he's now living in the attic, but it's sophisticated for the most part in terms of the writing style. It's not experimental, it's just very poetic, really well written. And I would also say that this book is subtly humorous. As I said, it's about the sort of human experience and the relationships he has, and there are just so many funny moments. It's not a comedy, but yeah, it's sort of just like if you were to take sort of snippets of your own life and sort of the ludicrous moments that you had, you'd find the humor in difficult situations. So yes, contemplative, sophisticated, and subtly humorous. A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor, a 5-star literary fiction recommendation for you. Next up, and I don't have a copy, so I'll pop one up on the screen, is Flight Behaviour by Barbara Kingsolver. And so this is a contemporary work, I would say. And it's set in the Appalachians, and it is focused on mainly the female protagonist, Dellarobia Turnbow, which is an amazing name, I must say. And Dellarobia lives in a very impoverished area, or an area that's struggling. It's agricultural, and they have a farm, and basically, Dellarobia ends up finding some butterflies. And I won't give it away as to why she discovers the butterflies, but yes, she's going away from the farm, stumbles on this grouping of monarch butterflies near to her property. And then it sort of sets off this journey where she ends up connecting with a scientist, ends up being more so involved in her community, and it's sort of like a journey of self-exploration in a way. In general, I really enjoyed the relationship between Dellarobia and the entomology professor, Ovid Byron. It was quite an interesting dynamic between the two of them. And another reason why I really enjoyed this book is because it has some main themes centered around climate change. And in terms of the 3 words that I would use to describe flight behavior, I would say it centers on prejudices. So as I mentioned, Dellarobia is from a very impoverished area, and there are prejudices both from her perspective to other people and from outsiders' perspectives on her life and lifestyle. I would say another word is nature. Obviously, it's about butterflies, it's centered on climate change and the natural environment. And I would say it's also immersive. This book does a really good job of sort of taking you as the reader and putting you into Dellarobia's life, her struggles, and the journey she goes on with the butterflies. The next book that I think is a 5-star literary fiction choice is Solar by Ian McEwan. I think this is one of Ian McEwan's lesser known works. I don't hear very many people talk about it, but I thought it was brilliant. So this is about a Nobel Prize winning physicist who's working on a solution for climate change, which ends up being involved with PV photovoltaic cells, solar panels, among other things, and hence the title Solar. And the physicist's main protagonist's name is Michael Beard. And so from my own personal interest, because it talks about climate change, I was interested in it. I actually ended up picking up this book originally to give to my dad because it was about a physicist, but it's so much more than that. So really, so I'll say the 3 words first and then I'll explain them. So witty, climate change, and detestable. So the climate change descriptor is obvious. It's a book about climate change solutions. But the witty and detestable mainly have to do with this just basket case of a human. Michael Beard is one of the most detestable characters I've ever come across, but in such a brilliant way. It's quite a lot of, it's dark comedy. It's described as dark comedy, but there's a lot of wit in it. So yeah, I would say that although the story was interesting, it's the character and the way that it's written with that dark humor and just such an exaggerated character that made this a 5-star read for me. I haven't actually read anything else by Ian McEwan yet, mainly because that one for me was such a win that I'm almost afraid to read anything else by him. I mean, I know Atonement is really popular, and I think he just came out with another one that was short stories, maybe? Can't remember, but yeah, in any case, Solar is, if you like character-centered literary fiction, looking at the human condition in its most devastating forms, then I would highly recommend Solar by Ian McEwan. Okay, so the fourth book I have to share with you is Unsettled Ground by Claire Fuller. And I listened to this on audiobook. And this book is contemporary, and it's about two adult twins who I think are either in their 50s or their 60s, named Jeannie and Julius. And they live in a rented cottage in England, in Berkshire, I think. Somewhere not too far away from London in any case. And this book is basically all about how their adult mother passes away, and they're sort of left in this very difficult situation in poverty and in isolation. And most of the story has to do with them trying to navigate their way out of that difficult situation. But also that lots of secrets of their mother start to emerge as the story unfolds. It's very character-based. It's basically about life on the fringes of modern British society for an older demographic, let's say. It's not... one of the reasons why I really enjoyed this book is because it created a rather realistic portrayal of how many people can find themselves in difficult situations in life today in the UK, and that you can be very quickly on the precipice of poverty and really struggle. So for that reason, I found that this book was really raw and really unsettling. In terms of the three descriptor words, I would say that the first one is resilience. So the resilience that Jeannie and Julius need to have to make their way through their mother's bereavement, but also when they start, losing their possessions and all the difficulties that come afterwards. The second descriptor I thought would be community, because although this book is about the twins, it really does focus on sort of a coming together of all of the members in their community, and both in a positive way, but also in terms of the mother's secrets and how those unfold. And then the third word is perceptions. So as I mentioned, it's a lot about sort of poverty and isolation, and how there can be a perception that people are doing well, but really they're actually struggling, or vice versa. So yeah, it was an unusual book for me. I don't tend to read that type of contemporary fiction that's mainly character-based, but I particularly enjoyed the audio, and I think it would be good just reading it in general, and I would really enjoyed Claire Fuller's writing style, which was also poetic. And for that reason, I gave Unsettled Ground 5 stars. So if you're looking for a contemporary recommendation, then I do suggest checking it out. The last book that I wanted to recommend is another, well, I was going to say it's another contemporary, but it actually is multiple time periods, and that's Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo. This is a very popular book. I probably don't need to tell you about it and why it's 5 stars, but I'm going to anyways. So this book is quite the task to read. There are 12 characters, I believe, and it's set over multiple decades. It mostly features the stories of Black women in the UK, but there are other people featured. And it's set surrounding a play, so a play that one of the main characters is involved in, and each subsequent character is sort of like a satellite story, and they all kind of relate to the play and the various acts in the play. It's a very creative way of presenting a book, and it's multiple perspectives, so polyphonic. And in terms of this book I would say is sort of like your classic definition of literary fiction. So it's experimental in the writing style. From what I remember, there was very little punctuation in it, which is jarring at first. Here I am talking, I'm not even holding it up. Here it is, Bernadine Evaristo, Girl, Woman, Other. So yes, there's very little punctuation in it. Let's see if I can... All right, here's a really good example. So, yeah, you can see that there aren't, like, the sentences don't really have capital letters on them, which I found very difficult at first, but you kind of get into the swing of it. So yes, it's experimental in its writing style. It's also poetic in its writing style. It's about a journey, so I would say that it's not a journey that I relate to in terms of the characters or the specific things that happen to them, but I do respect the book and admire it for its craft, let's say. The two characters that sort of have stuck with me the most out of this are Dominique, who is a gay woman, lesbian woman, who ends up moving in with another woman, and there's a domestic abuse situation going on. Her story really stuck with me. And Hattie as well. So she had a farmhouse that had sort of slavery connections, and her story was really poignant as well. In terms of the three descriptor words, I would say that this book is intersectional, so it covers aspects like racism, feminism, sexuality, patriarchy, and otherness. I would say that this book is rich. It's rich in complexity and sort of dynamism of characters. It's rich in ambition, and it's rich in its prose. And it's also ambitious. It's ambitious for Bernadine Evaristo to have written this, and it's also ambitious to read it. It's one that you really need to be in the right mindset for and take your time. It can get quite confusing with all the characters and the unconventional writing style, but it's so worth the journey on this one. So yes, intersectional, rich, and ambitious. Girl, Woman, Other by Bernadine Evaristo, a 5-star literary fiction recommendation. So to conclude my sort of final thoughts on these 5-star literary fiction picks for you today, I think I managed to find sort of a balance of male and female characters, at least the protagonists. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily gravitate for one over the other, as well as authors. I would say overall I tend to read more female authors, but as you can see there, it can happen quite often that a male author can produce a 5-star work for me. All of these books include different perspectives. That's something that I'm really drawn to. I like to read works where it's a perspective that's new to me, whatever that may be. And as I mentioned at the start, I tend to read literary fiction that's either contemporary or historical. I also enjoy multiple narrators, the polyphonic perspectives. I like when the book takes me on a journey. I have to be immersed in the writing. I've mentioned many times on my channel that although I look for really good characters, writing style is, I think, writing quality, I should say, is the most important aspect that I look for in a work. And then lastly, I was just sort of thinking about how I want that journey to be when I'm reading literary fiction. And the best thing I can kind of liken it to is when the book reads like a play or a symphony. So it sort of lulls you back and forth, and it takes you on this sort of dream-like journey. That's what I look for in both the writing style and the plot and how the characters are expressed. So yeah, those are the five-star literary fiction recommendations that I have for you today. Have you read any of these books? If so, what did you think of them? And I am always looking for new books to read, so I would love for you to put down below maybe your top 1 or 2 favorite literary fiction recommendations that you'd like to share with me and anybody else who watches the video. So that just leaves me to say thank you for watching this video. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're enjoying whatever it is that you're reading, and I will see you soon in a new video. Take care. Bye.